Greenland is very important for the national security, including of Denmark. And the problem is there's not a thing that Denmark can do about it if Russia or China wants to occupy Greenland. But there's everything we can do. You found that out last week with Venezuela. There's everything we can do about things such as that. Not going to happen. We're not, I can't rely on Denmark being able to fend themselves off.
Grønland vil ikke ejes af USA.
Greenland does not want to be owned by the USA. Greenland does not want to be governed by the USA. Greenland will not be part of the USA.
Vi vælger det Grønland, vi kender i dag, og som en del af kongeriget Danmark.
We choose the Greenland we know today, which is part of the Kingdom of Denmark. Now we are faced with a geopolitical crisis, and if we have to choose between the USA and Denmark, here and now, we choose Denmark. We choose NATO. We choose the Kingdom of Denmark. We choose the EU.
Tiden er ikke inde til interne diskussioner og splittelse.
This is not the time for internal discussions and division. This is the time to stand together and build on the community we know and we want.
Vi kender og til det vi ønsker.
1 minute ago, something snapped inside Donald Trump. As the Senate delivered a crushing bipartisan rejection of what insiders are now calling the Greenland plot, Trump did not turn his fire toward Democrats, foreign leaders, or the media. He turned it inward. He went after his own party. This was not a strategic disagreement. This was not quiet frustration behind closed doors. This was a public scorched earth attack aimed directly at Republican senators who dared to shut him down. And that is why this moment matters. Because the Senate vote did more than kill a controversial proposal. It exposed a growing reality that Trump can no longer control his own party the way he once did. For weeks, Trump had privately pushed the idea as a show of strength, a bold move meant to project dominance on the world stage. But when the plan finally reached the Senate floor, the response was brutal. Republicans joined Democrats in overwhelming numbers. No hedging, no procedural delay, a clean rejection. And Trump was watching. Within minutes, his tone changed. The praise disappeared. The loyalty talk vanished. In its place came rage, accusations, threats. Trump accused Republican senators of weakness, betrayal, and selling out America. He claimed they had embarrassed the nation. He hinted that primaries were coming. He framed the vote not as a policy disagreement, but as an act of disloyalty. That is the pattern. When Trump loses control, he lashes out. When institutions resist him, he attacks the people inside them. And when his own party draws a line, he treats it like treason. But this time feels different, because the Senate did not flinch. They did not scramble to clean it up. They did not rush to defend him. They let the rejection stand. And that silence from Republican leadership speaks louder than any speech. This is no longer just a story about a failed proposal. It is about a collapsing grip on power. And what happens when a leader realizes his influence is slipping, live in real time. To understand why Trump reacted the way he did, you have to understand what the Senate actually rejected and why the vote hit him so hard. Behind the scenes, the Greenland proposal had been framed by Trump allies as more than a policy idea. It was symbolic. It was meant to show that Trump still sets the agenda, that even controversial, unconventional moves would bend Congress back into line. For Trump, this was about dominance, not details. The plan was quietly circulated among Republican leadership weeks earlier. On paper, it was dressed up as a strategic expansion of U.S. influence, framed around national security, resources, and geopolitical leverage. In reality, many senators immediately recognized it as politically radioactive, not because they opposed strong foreign policy, but because they saw the fallout coming. Senators were warned by their own constituents, by defense analysts, and by international partners that the proposal would trigger backlash, diplomatic tension, and legal complications. Some Republican senators privately admitted they did not even understand how the proposal would be implemented without Congress ceding enormous authority to the executive branch. That alone was a red line. So when the vote finally came, it was decisive. Not narrow, not technical, decisive. Republicans crossed Trump openly. No procedural tricks, no excuses. They stood on the Senate floor and said no. And that is what made this moment explosive. Trump has always relied on one assumption, that Republicans might grumble privately but would fall in line publicly. That assumption collapsed in real time. This was not one senator breaking ranks. It was a clear message from the institution itself. The Senate was saying, "We are not doing this. And we are not afraid of you." That message landed like a shockwave. Because for Trump, rejection is never just rejection. It is humiliation. And humiliation is something he responds to with retaliation. Within minutes of the vote becoming public, aides described Trump as furious, pacing, demanding names, asking who voted against him and why. This was no longer about Greenland. This was about control slipping away. And when Trump feels control slipping, he looks for someone to blame. The moment the Senate vote became official, Trump did not wait for analysis, statements, or damage control. He went straight to attack mode. And this time, his target was not Democrats, foreign leaders, or the media. It was Republicans. Within minutes, Trump began blasting members of his own party, accusing them of weakness and betrayal. He framed the Senate's rejection not as a difference of opinion, but as a deliberate act meant to undermine him personally. According to people close to the situation, Trump saw the vote as a public challenge to his authority, one he felt he could not let stand. What made the outburst especially striking was the language. Trump did not speak like a party leader managing internal disagreement. He spoke like someone drawing battle lines. He labeled senators fake Republicans, hinted that they were compromised, and suggested they no longer represented real America. This was not policy rhetoric, it was loyalty rhetoric. Several of the senators he targeted had supported Trump consistently in the past. Some had defended him through impeachments, investigations, and scandals. That history did not matter. In Trump's world, loyalty is not cumulative. It is moment to moment, and in this moment, they failed him. Behind closed doors, Republican leadership was stunned by the speed and intensity of the attack. They had expected anger. They had not expected Trump to publicly torch his own party within hours. One senior aide described it as watching the bridge burn while people were still standing on it. And yet, no immediate apology came, no clarification, no attempt to lower the temperature. Trump doubled down. He made it clear that anyone who voted against the proposal would face consequences. Primary threats were implied, if not explicitly stated. The message was simple: fall in line or get crushed. But something unusual happened next. The party did not rush to defend him. Instead, many Republicans stayed silent. Others quietly signaled support for the Senate's decision. A few even defended the vote publicly, emphasizing congressional authority and national interest. That silence was not accidental, it was strategic. And it suggested something Trump may not fully accept yet. The fear factor is fading. For years, Trump's power inside the Republican Party rested on one unspoken rule: defy him publicly, and your career could be over. That fear shaped votes, muted criticism, and kept internal disagreements out of sight. But the Senate's response to this latest outburst suggests that fear is no longer absolute. What changed is not ideology. It is exhaustion. Behind closed doors, many Republican lawmakers have grown tired of governing through crisis management. Every vote now comes with the risk of triggering a public attack. Every disagreement carries the possibility of becoming a loyalty test, and over time that pressure has begun to backfire. Several senators privately admitted that the Greenland proposal became a breaking point, not because it was the worst idea they had heard, but because it symbolized something larger. It represented a demand for obedience without deliberation, and that is not how the Senate is designed to function. Institutionally, the Senate moves slower. It values process, consultation, and authority rooted in law. Trump's leadership style has always clashed with that structure. In the past, fear papered over that clash. Now, the cracks are visible. What is especially telling is that no senior Republican rushed to clean up Trump's comments. No coordinated messaging, no urgent defense tour on cable news. Instead, leadership figures emphasize the Senate's independence and the legitimacy of internal debate. That may sound routine. It is not. This is the same party that once bent itself into knots to avoid even mild public disagreement with Trump. The shift is subtle, but it is real. Some senators are calculating that Trump's political grip may no longer be permanent. Others believe that the cost of silence is now higher than the cost of defiance. And a growing number simply believe the institution must reassert itself before it loses relevance entirely. Trump senses this. That is why his reaction was so aggressive. When authority is secure, leaders do not need to threaten. They persuade. They negotiate. They wait. Threats are the language of insecurity. And the Senate just sent a message Trump did not want to hear. You can shout. You can attack. But you cannot force us. This confrontation is not really about Greenland. It is not even about this specific Senate rejection. What we are witnessing is a deeper power struggle between one man's demand for personal loyalty and an institution trying, slowly and cautiously, to reclaim its role. Trump has always treated political support as transactional. You back him, he protects you. You question him, he punishes you. That model worked when fear was high and alternatives felt risky. But institutions are not built to operate on personal loyalty alone. Eventually, the system pushes back. The Senate vote was that pushback. What makes this moment different from past rebellions is that it happened in daylight, not through anonymous leaks or quiet dissent, but through an unmistakable, recorded vote. Every senator knew Trump would see it. Every senator knew the consequences could be personal, and they voted no anyway. That matters. Because once lawmakers realize they can survive defiance, the spell breaks. The aura of inevitability fades. The calculation changes from, "What will Trump do to me?" to, "What happens if I keep surrendering my authority?" This is where Trump's strategy begins to fail. His instinct is escalation, louder attacks, broader threats. But escalation only works when the other side blinks. This time, they did not. Instead of folding, Republican senators began framing the issue around constitutional responsibility, national interest, and institutional boundaries. That language is not accidental. It is a shield. It allows them to justify resistance without framing it as personal betrayal. And it gives cover to others who may be waiting to break ranks next time. The fight is now about precedent. If Trump can force Congress to comply through intimidation, then the Senate becomes ornamental. If the Senate holds, then Trump's influence becomes conditional rather than absolute. That is why this moment feels unstable. Two sources of power are colliding. One built on personality and pressure, the other built on rules and endurance. And history shows that when institutions decide to reassert themselves, they move slowly at first, then all at once. Section 5. Section 5. Why this fight is bigger than one. Vote. This confrontation is not really about Greenland. It is not even about this specific Senate rejection. What we are witnessing is a deeper power struggle between one man's demand for personal loyalty and an institution trying, slowly and cautiously, to reclaim its role. Trump has always treated political support as transactional. You back him, he protects you. You question him, he punishes you. That model worked when fear was high and alternatives felt risky. But institutions are not built to operate on personal loyalty alone. Eventually, the system pushes back. The Senate vote was that pushback. What makes this moment different from past rebellions is that it happened in daylight, not through anonymous leaks or quiet dissent, but through an unmistakable recorded vote. Every senator knew Trump would see it. Every senator knew the consequences could be personal, and they voted no anyway. That matters. Because once lawmakers realize they can survive defiance, the spell breaks. The aura of inevitability fades. The calculation changes from, "What will Trump do to me?" to, "What happens if I keep surrendering my authority?" This is where Trump's strategy begins to fail. His instinct is escalation, louder attacks, broader threats. But escalation only works when the other side blinks. This time, they did not. Instead of folding, Republican senators began framing the issue around constitutional responsibility, national interest, and institutional boundaries. That language is not accidental. It is a shield. It allows them to justify resistance without framing it as personal betrayal, and it gives cover to others who may be waiting to break ranks next time. The fight is now about precedent. If Trump can force Congress to comply through intimidation, then the Senate becomes ornamental. If the Senate holds, then Trump's influence becomes conditional rather than absolute. That is why this moment feels unstable. Two sources of power are colliding, one built on personality and pressure, the other built on rules and endurance. And history shows that when institutions decide to reassert themselves, they move slowly at first, then all at once. Section 6. Section 6. The hidden message in Trump's public rage. Trump's outburst after the Senate vote did not just reveal anger. It revealed something more dangerous, something that suggests he may no longer feel bound by the normal limits of politics. When Trump attacked his own party, it was not just a tantrum. It was a signal, a warning shot, a message to anyone who might think about opposing him in the future. Because Trump has always believed that power is earned through dominance, not persuasion. His base has been trained to see dissent as betrayal, not debate. And his opponents have been trained to fear that backlash. But the Senate's vote showed a growing willingness to ignore that threat. That is why Trump's rage became more personal, more vindictive, and more public. He did not just criticize, he humiliated. He singled out lawmakers by name, mocking their careers, their loyalty, even their personal lives. This is not how a political leader behaves when he believes he is secure. This is how a leader behaves when he is trying to reassert control. The problem is that this strategy is losing its effectiveness. In the old days, the threat of retribution was enough to keep everyone in line. Now it has started to feel like desperation. The more Trump lashes out, the more he confirms what his critics have been saying for years, that his loyalty is conditional, his anger is personal, and his leadership is unstable. And the most alarming part for his allies is this: when Trump is angry, he becomes unpredictable. That unpredictability is a liability, not just politically, but legally. His public attacks can be used against him in court. His threats can be interpreted as intimidation. His words can become evidence. And that is why this fight is so risky for everyone involved. Because Trump is not just fighting the Senate. He is fighting the idea that the Senate has the right to disagree with him. He is fighting the idea that anyone can say no. And when a leader starts treating the rule of law as optional, the consequences do not stay inside the walls of Washington. They spill into the streets. They spill into the markets. They spill into the trust people have in the system. The Senate vote may look like a single political moment, but it could be the start of something much larger, a turning point, a crack in the foundation of Trump's influence. And the most important question now is not whether Trump will recover, but whether the party that once feared him will keep pretending this is just another fight, or whether they will finally admit what the Senate vote already revealed. The era of absolute control is ending. The moment the Senate vote was finalized, the ripple effects began instantly. Not tomorrow, not next week, but right away. The political world does not wait for a slow burn. It reacts. And in this case, it reacted with a kind of shock that even Trump's most seasoned critics did not fully anticipate. Because the vote did not just reject the Greenland plot, it exposed a larger truth. Trump's influence is not as absolute as his supporters believed. Even within his own party, the message was clear. Some Republicans are no longer willing to follow blindly. Some are no longer willing to risk their careers, their reputations, or their futures for a single man. And that is what makes this moment so dangerous for Trump. Because if the party begins to fracture, the consequences go beyond politics. They go into the realm of real-world power. They affect the decisions of donors, lobbyists, and corporate leaders. They affect the willingness of key allies to defend him in court. They affect the way voters see the party itself. And in politics, perception is often the only thing that matters. So when the Senate crushed the Greenland plot, it sent a message to the American public. The Senate still has the authority to say no. The Senate still has the power to check the president. The Senate still has the ability to act like a governing body, not a fan club. And that is why Trump's response was so extreme. He was not just reacting to a policy defeat. He was reacting to a blow to his identity. Because Trump has built his entire brand on the idea that he cannot be stopped, that he is unstoppable, that he is bigger than the system. When the Senate showed him he is not, it threatened the core of his image. And for a man whose power is built on image, that is a psychological threat as much as a political one. But the fallout did not stop there. Across the media, across social platforms, and across Washington itself, the vote sparked a new wave of discussion. People began asking the questions that Trump's allies have been avoiding for years. What happens if the party stops protecting him? What happens if the courts continue to act independently? What happens if the public begins to see the truth that the Senate just confirmed? And as those questions spread, Trump's position became more fragile, because he is now facing a new kind of enemy. Not just opposition, but doubt. And doubt is the most dangerous force in politics, because doubt spreads. It infects supporters. It makes them hesitant. It makes them question. It makes them wonder if the man they once believed could do anything is actually vulnerable. And once doubt enters the system, the entire structure begins to wobble. The Senate vote may have been about Greenland, but the real consequence was far bigger. It was a warning, a signal, a turning point. And if Trump's allies do not act quickly to contain the damage, the next few weeks could become the most chaotic period of his political career. By now, the story is no longer just about Greenland. It is about the bigger truth that has been quietly forming behind the scenes for months. Trump's power is being tested in a way it has never been tested before. Not by Democrats, not by the media, but by the system itself. The Senate vote was a signal that even Trump's closest allies are starting to question the cost of loyalty. They are starting to ask what it will mean for their careers if they keep defending a man who is becoming increasingly volatile. And the most important detail, the one that most people miss, is this. When the party starts to break, the legal risks increase. Because the moment the political shield weakens, the courts feel less pressure to hold back. The moment the party starts to doubt, prosecutors feel more confident. The moment the party starts to fracture, the public becomes more willing to accept consequences. This is not speculation. This is how power works. When a leader is protected, the system bends. When a leader is no longer protected, the system tightens. And that tightening is exactly what Trump is facing now. The Senate vote was not just a rejection of a plan. It was a rejection of a strategy. A rejection of the idea that Trump can use the presidency to expand his personal empire. A rejection of the belief that he can intimidate, bully, or manipulate the system into submission. And that is why the next few days will be critical. Because Trump is not the kind of leader who steps back when he loses. He doubles down. He escalates. He attacks. He uses his platform to reshape the narrative. And if he senses that the party is slipping away, he may choose a more extreme path. He may push harder. He may threaten more. He may attempt to force a crisis. And the question now is not just what he will do, but what the system will allow him to do. Because this vote has already changed the balance of power. It has shown that the Senate can say no. It has shown that Trump is not untouchable. And it has shown that the party is not a single unified force anymore. The real battle is just beginning. The next stage is no longer about a single policy or a single plot. It is about control. It is about who gets to define the rules. It is about whether a man who has spent his entire career breaking the system can survive when the system fights back. The Greenland vote was a dramatic moment, but the bigger story is the one that follows it. The story of a leader losing control and a system finally deciding to stand up. And if the next weeks unfold the way they are starting to, this could be remembered as the moment the Trump era began to unravel,